On this episode of ReTREAD, we ramble around a Land Rover 101, look at a bulkhead swap in our ReTREAD Repair, and we round up with a chat about our favourite cars in pop culture.
Welcome to the third episode of ReTREAD, and your host this evening is extremely pissed off with his cars.
Why?
My 88 has just failed its MOT in spectacular fashion, with welding, engine having a huge oil leak, steering generally being goosed, and the helpful addition of a Vosa inspector who came and did the MOT again on it.
Just to prove it was knackered.
Yeah, after it was going to fail anyway, he came and did it even worse. So that's annoying. That all needs to be sorted out. And I've just spent the day working on my silver Spitfire that I bought since Phil convinced me that Spitfires were so awesome.
Mine's working.
Bastard. And my Spitfire's not working particularly well either. It's a beautiful engine block that I had to replace the original engine that came with it. It's meant to be really good, rebuilt, and it's kicking so much oil out the back, blue smoke wise, that I think it's burning more oil than petrol.
That could turn a tad expensive.
Yeah. Well, it's brilliant mileage in that sense.
Yeah. Miles per gallon of oil.
Yeah, and tuning it up is still being a bit of a pain in the arse. So check the blog for the latest on that.
So you must have something that is working though.
Well, yeah, there is one thing. Way back in the late 60s, the Ministry of Defence was looking for a new vehicle to tow their brand shiny new 105mm light gun. They also needed it to be able to fit inside an Andover C-1 cargo aircraft, and it needed to be able to be lifted by a Wessex helicopter. There wasn't anything available particularly at the time. Land Rover had their 2B forward control, which wasn't really quite up to the towing requirements, the loading requirements that the military needed, so they had to come up with something new. This is what they did. This is a forward control 101. It was Land Rover's answer to the problem. The forward control was built for the military between 1975 and 1978 with a number of pre-production models dating back from 1972. Back in that time, the Range Rover was just going into production, so Land Rover started using pieces of that. They picked up the engine, the gearbox, centre diff, and a lot of the mechanicals and mounted it in a new 101-inch leaf-sprung chassis. There are about 2,700 of these made. Most of them were in this configuration, the general service configuration with the soft top. There were about 450 ambulance-bodied versions made, which are about 7 feet wide and a bit taller. There were about 125 radio-bodied versions done, and there were a very rare variant known as the Vampire. There was only 21 built. Now, Vampire stands Vampire, someone at Land Rover has wrestled the acronym to mean Vehicle Army Mobile Position Interferometry Radio Equipment. Okay, yeah. Basically, teams of 3 of these cars would drive around, stick up massive great big masts and try and home in on enemy radio signals and triangulate their positions. To enable it to be carried by helicopter, it was rigged up with some tie-down points on the chassis rails. There's some in the front in the cab and there's some on the back of the car, and when you took the canvas off, the cables could be rigged up through the middle of the vehicle and allow it to be carried. Many of them actually suffer from damaged bump stops from being dropped a little bit too hard on the ground when they're fully laden. Many 101s also had a winch mounted on the chassis in the middle of the vehicle, a knock-on winch, and this was PTO driven, and the cable could exit out of the front or the back of the vehicle going straight along the top of the chassis rail, and that allowed it to be quite versatile in getting itself out of trouble. This plate on the front here is also common to a lot of military trucks and Land Rovers. It's a weight classification plate. The idea behind these is that bridges would be classified by what sort of weights and numbers of vehicles they could carry, and this gave commanders an easy way of determining how many things they could have on a bridge at one time. Across the top of the truck here, I haven't got them on at the moment, but there's a shovel fits in here, pickaxe head and pickaxe handle, along with the jacking equipment, so that's always readily accessible, and a fire extinguisher. And like all good military vehicles, it features the lovely screw-on lights. Some interesting facts about the 101 then. Land Rover during testing found that the axles simply weren't strong enough. Where the chrome balls bolt onto the end, they were suffering fracturing. So this is one of the few Land Rovers where they actually welded them on, which means if you wind up buying a 101 with pitted chrome balls, they're a bitch to change. It's powered by the Range Rover 3.5 litre V8 engine, which means it gets an abysmal 14.2 miles to the gallon on a good run, and that makes it pretty expensive to own. I've actually put a gas system on this one to make it a little bit more bearable, and we'll cover that in another episode of ReTREAD. Like all military Land Rovers, it has an interesting 6-position switch. You've got your standard tail lights, front side lights and tail lights, headlights, side lights and tail lights, but then there's also a convoy setting and S-convoy. The convoy light shines down on the rear diff, which is painted white, and generally when you're in convoy settings it disables things like brake lights, indicators, basically all the other lights on the car. So anybody following you has just got this tiny little patch of light down underneath the diff to follow, and that enabled them to travel in virtual darkness without being detected. Other interesting things in here, because there is no bonnet area, we've got to kind of fit all the things inside the cab that wouldn't usually be in the bonnet. So up here on the dash you've got the brake and clutch fluid reservoirs. You may notice they're a bit cracked. They suffer from the sunlight, which they don't normally get in under a bonnet. Over there in the passenger footwell is your wiper fluid reservoir. In the centre here we've got a few switches and things. There's obviously a handbrake, which looks particularly puny. There's a cold start lifter. There's a device for turning the air on and off. The giant radiator valve is actually the heater circuit. And there's another little lifting thing there for the vacuum operated centre diff. In the middle there, the big red lever is the high and low range box. That pivot that the lever's on also could be fitted with a winch lever and an overdrive lever, as the 101 could accept the standard Range Rover overdrive as well. Tucked under the dash here, we've actually got the brake servo and vacuum assist. MOTs are also a bit of an annoyance with 101s. The larger bodied variants are a Class 7 MOT because of their weight. This one is plated just under 3.5 tonnes. Because it's over 3 tonnes, most MOT stations will automatically assume it should be a Class 7. It actually currently goes through under a dual purpose vehicle exemption as a Class 4, but it's a bit sort of fiddly in the regulations. You can find the MOT manual online here. That will allow you to find the regulation that this sort of thing can pass through on. Another MOT manual you might find useful is this one, which goes into detail about what the tester is going to be looking for on your car. You can use this to find out things like, does my ancient vehicle need to pass an emissions test, or is it just going to be a smoke test to decide whether we can drown the guy behind in black smoke so they can't see, like my 88 gets. So one of the problems they've tried to solve with the 101 is the height. You don't want to be trying to get into this in tight trousers like I am. They've bolted on a lovely little circular step here to try and get you in and out. Never park with your wheels turned, because it's a real nightmare getting in and out. First of all, I'm going to have to breach the security. There we go. They're meant to be sort of operated by people who carry guns. They didn't really need locks. So, and oh yeah, what they should have fitted is a nice handle so you didn't pull the steering wheel when you got in and damage it, but they didn't. So. So the really awesome thing about the forward control is its size. Sitting forward of the wheels allows you to have an absolutely massive load space and get loads more kit in than you can in a standard Land Rover. In fact, in many ways, I can't work out why all cars aren't built like this. It just makes a lot more sense. It does make the engine a little bit more inaccessible, but when you take the cover off down here beside me, this lovely table, and the gearbox cover, access is in some ways really quite good. The 101 is actually a very practical car. There's 6 seats in here. There's enough space to move house. It's 4-wheel drive, and its ground clearance is better than your average Defender, so you can pretty much do anything you like with it. That said, it isn't particularly fast. The original gearing for this lovely V8 engine was designed to pull heavy equipment. Top speed without the high range gears in and without the overdrive is maybe sort of 60 miles an hour, 70. Actually, no, yeah, we've had this to 70. That was a scary experience. I usually cruise about 55, and even then you're kind of looking for another gear. Tyres can be a problem on 101s. The wheel size is kind of unique amongst Land Rovers to this car, the 6-stud wheel pattern, and the size only lends itself to about 3 types of tyre. There's the original bar grips, which are atrocious, and all of them are well out of date by now. You can get Michelin, I think it's XLZs or XCLs, and there's what I've got on here, which is the petless tyres. These tyres have a sort of contact patch about 1.5 inches wide, which makes them quite scary on wet roads. I believe there is a company producing wheels nowadays that do fit the 101, which will give you a lot more tyre choice. But to sort of reboot it is going to cost you probably £1,000, and that might not even include a spare. The spare tyre, by the way, that you see in all these shots should fix up on this lovely mount behind me, and then it is accessible through a little hatch in the canvas. It's quite a good design. The only problem is whenever you turn to look beside you or behind you, all you can see is tyre, and it's a bit intimidating and I don't like it, so it just tends to get slung in the back, and then I've got this lovely open space behind me. There's quite a formidable road presence with this this truck. Out of everything I've ever driven, you do kind of feel invincible in this thing. And it's a little bit strange being sort of right at the front, parking in parking spaces. You always wind up too far back. You've got to take into account that straight in front of your feet is the front of the car. But it is quite nice to pull up next to an expensive new Range Rover at the traffic lights and look down on the driver. The steering on 101s has quite a bad reputation. The steering box is one of the weakest components in the car. This one's pretty worn, and you've got to do quite a lot of corrections to keep it in a straight line, especially at high speed on a downhill. The gearbox is quite sort of loose in the bushing as well, which can make it interesting to get gears. But there's quite a long linkage back here to get all the way back to where the gearbox is. The engine power from the V8, the torque especially, is really quite impressive. When I first bought the car, driving it home, we actually pulled away from one of the junctions, and I was noticing it was a bit sluggish. It wasn't quite pulling away as quickly as usually did, and it turned out I was in fourth, and having made no special allowances. I have had this thing off-road a couple of times. One time we did get kind of stuck. I dropped the front wheel into a big muddy hole, and the opposite back wheel lifted straight up in the air. Heating system is one thing Land Rover got right in this thing. Mainly what they did with the heating system was they connected it to a 3.5 litre V8, which produces insane amounts of heat. There's quite a big heater box sitting here, and the pipe that sort of links it to the rear cabin, which probably doesn't do very much, you can take off and direct towards you, and amazing amounts of heat is kind of forced into this footwell. I've never ever been cold in this truck. Compared to my 88 in particular, being noisy as it is, this is actually much more pleasant to drive long distance. The main noise is actually off the tyres. I suspect with a decent sort of more modern road bias set of tyres and maybe an overdrive, it could be quite refined. As interesting Land Rovers go, the 101 is definitely one of the most exotic. It's guaranteed to put a smile on the face of any Land Rover fan, and indeed virtually anybody. Kids love them. Everybody sort of looks at them as they go past and goes, what the hell is that? And it's a really quite a nice vehicle to drive and to own. 101 pricing, you can pick them up anywhere between £3,000 and maybe £5,000, and whatever price you pay for it, provided you keep them in the same condition, you will be able to sell it on for the same price. They really don't devalue. They've been similar prices for a lot of years now. Owning one of these has been kind of a dream of mine since I've been about 17 years old. I picked this up recently because I went and saw a 101 at a local steam fair and just kind of went, oh yes, I'd forgotten how cool these are, and immediately started looking on eBay. It's a fantastic vehicle. It's the most unique thing we've got here on ReTREAD, and we're proud to have it as part of the show.
So well, that was pretty good for a vehicle that is working. So that's not too bad, 1 out of 3.
Yeah, of the cars that to have trouble with, that one being the most expensive and the most difficult to sort out, I'm glad that's the one that's working.
So does that deal with your small penis issue?
It does fantastically, yes.
Yes.
Is it overcompensation?
Just enough compensation.
Just enough.
So I take it all them people on the forums and stuff that you talk to had to have like a tissue while watching that.
Quite possibly, yeah.
It's that
There's a lot of people
Feedback.
feel that way about 101s.
Yeah, there seem to be these
They
people
cry
that have
over
that
them?
fetish.
Is that what they need a tissue for?
I think they do cry over them, yes, Richard.
Right.
Yeah, most of the time.
Because if a large thing goes in like that, you would probably cry.
It'll be the bills that they'll cry over.
Right, people in that land, it's me to introduce a part, and it's about a bulkhead of his. But I'm not in this bit, so some of you, because I know I'm sexy, I want to rewind, not fast forward over that. And I'll be back later, so see the clip.
Hi and welcome to this time's ReTREAD Repair, and it's about replacing my Defender bulkhead. This is the old one. This has been taken off. We're about to show you the process of taking it off and putting the new one on, because as you can probably notice, there's quite a bit of rust on this. This is not all rust around here. This is all wax oil and bits where we've tried to prep it and stop it from getting rusty. However, oops, that's a great big hole in it. There's also a massive hole above the vent here, hole in the footwell here, and the big bit that noticed that made us want to change it is the gaping hole in the corner of the bulkhead here. Now originally I was just thinking about doing a corner repair section. You can buy the repair corners for it. However, when we took a good look at it and went, no, this is all to bits, I said best option is just to completely replace it. So this is how we did it. Okay, so first off we removed the front wing. Again, this was a bit more intricate than what we thought. The last time I helped remove a wing was on Ian's 88, and it doesn't have silly things like inner wings, wheel arch extensions and the like that make it so much more difficult to take off. However, we managed to get the front wing off, the front grille and surround off, and then the bumper and the second wing off. Once in the garage, the first thing we did was remove the windscreen. Now what I'd been told was the best option, rather than taking the bottom and top seal off the windscreen, was actually to leave it attached to the roof and remove the roof and windscreen as one go. Next we removed the two front doors, which was made a lot easier by leaving the existing door hinges actually on the bulkhead, and I'm going to replace them with new ones. Then started removing the dash, the wiper motor and some of the wiring from inside the dash, and then moved on to the pedals, removing the accelerator pedal, brake and brake servo and clutch and reservoir for that. And then got a couple of friends to come and lift the bulkhead completely out and off the vehicle. While it was off the vehicle, I decided it was a good point to look at all the chassis work underneath it and round about it and give it a good paint with a couple of coats of Hammerite. I then started prepping the new bulkhead, attaching part of the dashboard, the wiring loom, the fuse box, steering wheel and steering column back on. Then assembled a lot of the rest of the dash because that can be done off the vehicle before it gets put back on. I then reattached all the pedal assembly, reattached the steering, accelerator, brake and clutch. We then attached the heater motor to the bulkhead and then started looking at attaching the wiring and connecting everything back from the engine bay through to the dashboard. As we were bringing this stuff back through to the dashboard, I noticed a problem with the speedometer cable. The end that attaches to the back of the actual speedo unit must have broke off or come dislodged on removal, so that needs a new speedo cable and getting underneath to disconnect the old one and reattach a new one. We then have some strange person standing on a lift while it's going down. I'm sure we'll have some reports of health and safety at this point. I then got asked had I replaced the bulkhead to windscreen seal, and I said no. I said, oh, you should do that, but I've put the windscreen back in. Oh, it's no problem, we'll just fit it in between. After the windscreen seal was put in, we're then trying to get the bulkhead to line up. I woke up in the middle of the night and shouted, Eureka! I've got an idea on how to do this. Let's get a ratchet strap and attach it and use that to pull it down so that hopefully it'll line up and get the bolts in enough to be able to tighten it down using the screw on the back. This was an absolutely brilliant idea of mine and worked perfectly, although again, health and safety wise, you don't want to be anywhere near the ratchet strap had it came off. After the windscreen was bolted down, while Simon was sorting out the wiring for the wing, Ian attached the bottom of the bulkhead to the chassis. We then refitted the doors, lined them up and bolted them on. We'll probably need checking again afterwards just to make sure they line up after we get everything else on. Just a test fit on just to make sure everything lines up whilst we rebuild the front end. So now we've got the passenger side wing on and we go and sort out the wiring and earthing point for the driver side wing and refit that. We then start doing some more of the wiring on the inside of the dash, including bringing the speedometer cable through to attach to the instrument binnacle. We then reattach the front grille surround, which was made worse by the larger intercooler and a very small gap to make it fit, and attach the grille to the front of that. We came across a problem with the windscreen heater vents in that they don't line up with the new bulkhead. Obviously there must be slight differences from one bulkhead to another. A few minutes with an angle grinder and bend them out the way and we get a perfectly good fitting vent again. We then reattach the transmission tunnel and bolt the floor back down. Oh yeah, we also put all the lights back on and the bumper on, and then start putting the carpet back down and reattach the rest of the dash and hope everything works. So almost all complete now. All I've got to do is put the front number plate on and take it down to the MOT station to see if it'll pass an MOT. Which, hooray, yes it does, and it's back home on me drive again. Happy.
So Richard, after coming back from all that, there are a number of jobs you've done on various cars, including the heads on a V8 Range Rover once upon a time.
Yep.
How does a Land Rover bulkhead swap compare to everything else you've done?
I never want to do that again.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought you'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What thought out of, well, I'm not going to say a nice, easy, 5-minute job. I knew it was going to take a while. But, the week working solidly on it 9 till 5.
And you had access to a ramp as well.
Yeah, that was access to ramp and garage facilities and mechanics that said they knew what they were doing. And it's
Might
still
watch this show.
Do any mechanics?
That's more what they're doing.
Professional help. I think
Professional
is-
help.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Fully certified.
and it still proved to be a bitch of a job.
So this time, ReTREAD Round-up segment. We're looking at inspirational vehicles from film and television. And the one that comes to mind just from Ian's 101 is the Judge Dredd's 101 Land Rovers that were converted for use in the film. If you're interested in seeing them, I believe one of them's still down at Dunsfold's Land Rover collection.
Yeah, I think it is
museum.
down there. And oddly enough, given that a number of 101s were sacrificed for that, that's not the thing I remember out of that film.
What do you remember?
I remember the ABC robot was cool, and I remember Sylvester Stallone going, I don't know. But the city cabs were just kind of background.
They were in the background, and
Yeah.
apparently, copyright Mark Evans this bit probably, but apparently only one of them had a door. The rest you had to go up from underneath. To go in.
Big fiberglass shells.
Fiberglass
Yeah.
shells. It seems a bit of a waste of 101s, but they weren't quite as rare back then.
No.
Yeah. So who else has got who's got thoughts on film
Brum,
and television?
he's pretty cool.
Brum.
Brum?
Brum.
Yeah, Brum.
What? Okay, I do remember Brum. I'm
Brum
surprised
is-
you remember Brum.
I'm not that old. Brum was
That's
class.
the point, you're not that old.
Yeah.
So Brum was your inspiration for owning a Spitfire.
It's a classic mint car. Brum is a mint car.
I think Brum should have been the inspiration for my Spitfire.
Brum is Chitty Chitty Bang Bang that went through the wash.
Yeah.
Let's say,
Hot
Chitty
cycle.
Chitty Bang Bang, that was a fantastic one.
You look a bit like the child catcher.
Moving swiftly on, I'm going to steal Simon's Thunder.
Thunder. Thundercats.
Oh, come on!
Blue Thunder's a helicopter. You can't have
No.
that one.
I was going to say Night Industry 2000.
Oh, the Hoff.
You
What,
look
the
now
Hoff's
like
car?
him.
Yes.
What was that car?
It was a Pontiac.
Pontiac Trans Am.
Pontiac Trans Am.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I assume that the what company is that? Is Pontiac company?
Pontiac's a mate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's American.
I don't know these things. He's got the anorak on. I'm assuming that Knight Rider basically kind of kept that company afloat in buying a new car every week, every time they jumped kit and destroyed it.
Yeah, probably.
Most probably. Yeah.
Probably, yeah. That reminds me of the other one that was instrumental in my upbringing is the Dodge Charger, which people know from Dukes of Hazzard,
Right.
big orange thing.
Mhm.
And I think they broke something like 30 of them.
Yeah.
There's only one left in some museum in America somewhere. But yeah, they would break them on a regular basis.
Mm.
I thought you were going to mention something like the Skyline on Fast and Furious or something like that.
No. Funnily enough, the Skylines on Fast and Furious, up until
Did they have a turbo?
He's going to say turbo. Yeah.
they all did. But
Are we going to have a turbo
no
count on
one's
this one as
going
well?
to have mine in it, are they? The first one had an R33 in it because they were still quite rare. But then, what's the one where he builds the blue one and goes down steps? Is that 4? Fast and Furious 4, and it's a blue R34.
And I put my hand up and said I've never seen any of them.
Oh, they're worth watching in for a comic book kind of way. But that was actually not a Skyline. A little bit of a geek. I'll put my geek hat on. That was a
Did you ever
4x4.
take it off?
Occasionally. That was a 4x4.
Like it's the-
Yeah.
It was a 4x4 with a Skyline body on it. That.
Oh, awesome.
How they filmed it. So.
Right.
So
There you go.
anyway, yeah, the Interceptor from Mad Max.
Jensen.
That's one of my
What?
favourites.
Jensen.
Is it a Jensen?
I don't care what it was. It was cool.
It was big, but it was a fake supercharger on that. It wasn't real.
No turbo.
No, supercharger.
Ah.
Linear power.
So how was it not real?
It was just a prop. And
Right.
it wasn't connected. It was just a prop on the bonnet.
Fair
So I'm sorry, I've just completely ruined it.
It was still cool. I don't care.
The DeLorean now, that is cool, people out there.
Yeah, but setting your tyres on fire is not something we would recommend.
No, do it. Put it on YouTube and it'll be class. Don't listen to these old farts. If you've got a DeLorean, set it on fire.
Apparently, wasn't there a problem with it where it couldn't reach 88 mile an hour?
It was a
or something?
DeLorean. Yeah, it was a DeLorean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it didn't actually go very
I think
fast.
that bullet everywhere.
Going back to episode 1, I don't think practical classic of a DeLorean is any good.
No, you have the money, so you get it completely rebuilt.
Right.
If you had a DeLorean,
They did a number of shots in Back to the Future where he's sitting there turning the key, and not much was happening.
That's just standard DeLorean.
And that was just standard DeLorean. Yeah, that wasn't even in the script.
Why did
Yeah.
the company go wrong then? Because I mean, they've been doing that with Land Rovers for years, and it's worked for them perfectly. So,
Was the DeLorean? I mean, was the car kind of not very well liked when that film came out?
it just wasn't. It was a
the
Irish
problem,
company,
well, it was
Because
Built-
there's few better advertisements for a car than that movie, isn't
I think
there?
Yeah.
the
It
main.
should have sold thousands of them.
I think reading up on it, I think it was one of these some rich man sort of dibbling in things illegally and things like that as well.
Right.
Plus Irish people building them. That's some other people
On a Friday afternoon.
on me hate list now.
No, that was the ones in Birmingham.
Alright.
That was British Leyland. That'll do. It's Friday afternoon. Let's
Yeah.
knock off, lad.
Was yours built on a Friday afternoon?
Which one?
Oh, we're going back. I think we should get back to cars and like movies and
Yeah,
films.
we should, yeah.
Another one like more recent would have to be.
I haven't
That's
seen that.
not a
one.
car.
It's completely gonna Quattro.
Oh,
okay.
yeah, Quattro.
Yeah, Quattro,
Manchester
yeah.
United.
Yes, you'd have to have it's something that's actually reachable as well. You could possibly own a red Quattro. Well, a different coloured one. and
I
paint
think
it
they're a
red.
lot more expensive than they used to be before Ashes to Ashes came
Yeah.
out. But
Yeah.
yeah, they are. And
Yeah.
they're a nice car as well, yeah. They're cooler than...
There's a couple kicking around locally to us, I think, as well.
I've seen one around, yeah.
The
Mm.
Quattros. But,
Actually, a bit Gene Hunty. What is that then?
so right, I've done 2. You've done 2. You've only done 1 though. What have you done?
I've done 3.
Have you? Oh,
Bro.
okay. Bro. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, if we go back to like Herbie. Was that a...
Oh,
Yeah, Herbie was cool.
works.
Herbie was cool.
When I was this big, Herbie was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you mean when you were that big? Herbie's still cool. What
Have
can
you
not like?
watched a Herbie film recently?
Okay, so they speeded
What, the new
everything
one
up
or
because it
the
was an air-cooled
old-
engine.
Old originals
That was the chair, not me.
for rewatching.
There was a new one.
Alright. Yes,
I
there's a
haven't
new
watched the
Herbie
new one, I
movie
have to
with a
admit.
new shaped beetle, which
Yeah,
is
I think I
Didn't do it.
boycotted that.
yeah.
But the old Herbie films are just fun. They're just out and out fun. And the Beetle, they gave it a personality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still, actually, there was a newer film where there was a Beetle in,
Mm-hmm.
the Transformers movie,
Right.
because Bumblebee was originally
Was
in the
originally a
comics.
beetle.
Yeah, I've got my geek hat firmly on my head.
Oh, definitely.
Bumblebee was a Beetle originally. But GMC got the rights for the film and everything. So
And
they had
GMC
that
don't
in.
make a beetle.
No, they don't.
No.
But Beetles are still cool. You see, they're just
Yeah,
not.
okay, they are, yeah.
He's only agreeing to shut me up.
I could be a sad old person and mention the Land Rover on Daktari, but no one remembers that film.
Daktari, what the heck was that?
It was a film made in, well, it was a TV series made in Africa in the 70s, I think. I'm sounding really old now. And the only reason I remember it's the Land Rover and Clarence, the one-eyed lion.
What the hell are you... You're making this up.
You'll have some old-fashioned music coming on and
Richard's
I can
parents.
Producer, Google Daktari and put it like a little film up above like Phil's head or above Ian's head.
back in today when we went down the pits and we came back and watched a movie about coal.
Yeah.
The producer is trying desperately not to laugh behind the camera.
What car was in it? Sorry, was it?
It was
Land
a
It was a Land Rover.
Sue 3 long wheelbase station wagon.
Okay.
Of course, the
Anything you say.
infamous car that just absolutely is the pinnacle of television fame is what I own, which is the Toyota Hilux, because it's completely indestructible, isn't it?
According to that certain
It's
program.
it's not.
Well, they
I've
didn't
tried
break
it.
Do you want a
Okay.
tenner? I'll bet you a tenner I can break it.
We know you can get it stuck. No, I owned a Hilux. I had 2 little crashes with it, and it was destroyed.
Two little crashes,
You
well-
can't drive it away when it's only got 3 wheels.
I was just going to say, defining it as a little crash when it only had 3 wheels at the end of said crash is
But
not a
come
little
on,
crash.
you would think, you know, a Hilux against an inferior
Has
deal
your car's been in
it is.
films?
Yeah.
Shut up. The Mystery
You-
Machine,
you
that's
started
good. I like the Mystery Machine.
Phil's waving that we're going way off topic.
Yes, it was.
Is the Mystery
I
Machine
just
off topic?
mentioned the Hilux.
Okay, actually, here's a question. Here's something we need feedback on. Is it cool to paint your car to look like the Mystery Machine?
It
I've
depends.
seen one
If
or
you
two.
do it perfectly, probably. But if it's like slightly shit, like most of them.
Well, what make was the Mystery Machine? What make of van was it? It was
It was
It was a
indeterminate, wasn't it?
cartoon!
It was a cartoon, exactly. So it was
It
just,
could be anything.
nobody knows
Was
quite
it a
what
very
it's
high
supposed
pitched
to be.
cartoon?
Yeah, what was Dick Dastardly's car in? It's like saying that, isn't it? It's a cartoon, they just make things up.
Yeah, so nobody knows quite what it was, which means that the real world cars that are painted like that are never going to look quite like the cartoon.
But
But-
what? I'm gonna.
But is it cool? Let us know.
Especially when
hang on. Richard's about to dig himself another hole, so crack on.
Well, I was going to say about the more modern film of Scooby Doo that actually did have a real life mystery machine van in it.
All right, what was that?
I can't remember.
Well, you're no good.
There
are
was
you?
a modern
Google,
film of Scooby-Doo?
Google.
Again, you know,
Well, I think
You're just trying to make up for your bloody Dactylus thing that you came up with earlier.
Yeah, you've gone to a
the
modern
producer
film,
wants
but
a cup of
still-
tea or something. Yo, me brothers out there in internet land, cowabunga. Doesn't work. Anyway, you've probably got some sort of groovy. This I'd have to wrap this up, mate. Groovy thoughts about that. So get on our Facebook at Facebook ReTREAD something or other and things like that. There's
Right, that was episode 3. If you've enjoyed it, please make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode.
Visit us at www.retread.tv for updates on our blog.
and feedback by email, and if you've got complaints, do it to Top Gear.
And don't forget to hit the like button on Facebook as well.
We'll see you later.
Bye.
I knew that was coming as well.
Cup of tea!